Hello, my name is Paul Hutchinson and I'm teaching a course here at Boston University's Metropolitan College called Leadership Through Service. Now this is a really innovative course. It brings together concepts of organizational behavior and leadership with experiential and service learning, while also looking at the history and culture of Boston as a case study. So it's a pretty exciting course, especially for someone who's new here to Boston. But I want to start off by bringing you to a place that's really sacred ground for New Englanders. It's a pretty special place here in Boston, and it typifies what this leadership and service course is all about. So I'd like to take you there. Then we're going to talk a little bit about what this course is all about, how we're going to be learning, what we're going to be learning, and what we'll be doing throughout the semester. So come on with me. So in the 1630s, when the English first came and settled here on the Shawmut Peninsula, they needed a place that they could graze their cattle and graze their sheep. And they decided they wanted to keep a space of greenery that they could hold in commons. It was going to be at the base of Beacon Hill, which is where they were going to eventually build the state capital. But the idea of holding land in commons, that it's something community, and that it's going to stay in that community, is what set up this tradition and this space that we're in now. We're in what's called the Boston Commons. Now in the 1600s, this is where where witches were executed. This is where a young Benjamin Franklin would have played when he was a child. This might have been where he learned how to fly a kite. During the Revolution, this is where the British soldiers drilled and practiced and defended the city against George Washington, until George Washington liberated this for the Continental Army and what would become the United States of America. On these paths, on these trails that have been held in commons, countless philosophers, political leaders, and poets have wandered and thought about what it means to be American, what it means to be a Bostonian, what it means to live in community and really build a reflective and important community that's focused on making this world a better place. And that's a lot of what we talk about as this vision of the city on the hill. And I want to show you that, and the best expression of that here in a minute, by just going up over this hill for a second. We're going to look at two of the best examples of how Boston really strives to be this city on the hill. So behind me here, this is the Massachusetts State House on Beacon Hill. Now the idea behind this, when John Winthrop, the first governor of Massachusetts, sailed into Boston Harbor, he looked at this Shawmut Peninsula, at this Beacon Hill, and said, "We shall build a city upon the hill to which the whole world will look. It shall be a beacon." And that idea that we're going to build this community, this city on the hill, that will live out those ideals, that will really try to make this world a better place, a new place, a world that is what life can be. And so, when this building was built, the Golden Dome was meant to reflect that idea of a golden city on a hill, that this represents our ideals. And Beacon Hill and the State House has, housed governors and political leaders and Kennedys and all sorts of folks who've really made a positive impact here in the United States, and represents that idealism of what Massachusetts, what New England, and what America can be. But what's fantastic is over there, about 200 yards down this hill, is Park Street Church. Now Park Street Church in 1829 was where the first voices of abolition began. It's where people in Boston first started to say slavery is wrong. And what started the movement, the abolitionist movement that eventually led to the American Civil War, those first sparks were cast right here at the bottom of the hill. Now, when you go to Park Street Station and Park Street Church, what you see are people who are publicly protesting, people that are talking about issues of social justice. We have homeless that are sleeping on the streets. We've got all these issues that are very obviously apparent. They're not being pushed away and shied away. And they're all within sight of this shining golden dome. I think this spot really represents what I want to try to do with leadership and service. What we want to say is, what are the ideals? What's the world that we want to create? And what do we have to address to fix that? And looking at Boston as an example, the reality that here, the land that we hold in commons is bounded by those extremes. And that's a good metaphor for really kind of the world and the situation that we're all in right now. And how are we going to deal with those two extremes? Dealing with the ideals that we have and the realities that we face. And in the Leadership Through Service course, we want to really delve into that. and look at both idealistically, how can we make this a better place, and realistically, what do we need to do? How do we need to roll our sleeves up, get our hands dirty, and make this place what we believe it could be? So let's talk about the nuts and bolts of this class, of leadership through service. Now, the central purpose of this class is to develop leadership skills and team development skills within the student group that's going to be here, while also having a positive impact on the community. We want to really focus on building real-world skills, not just kind of academic concepts, but really delve deeply into how can we apply what we're learning to make a real impact. So there's three interdependent parts of how this course is structured. The first is the academic. We're going to take organizational behavior, the idea of studying how teams and groups operate and behave, and use that as kind of the core academic piece of what we're looking at. We're going to look at major theories, trends, concepts on how teams best operate and best become a high-performance organization. So that's going to be the first piece, our academic piece. The second piece is going to be an experiential education. We're going to use service learning specifically as the way to engage this. But instead of just talking about it in the classroom, we're going to have students get out into the community by partnering them with service organizations, folks that are really serving the needs of the community, folks that are working in soup kitchens, folks that are working with the elderly and housing and things like that. But trying to get people to get out there and find out what's going on. It's not going to be a 1 or 2 hour kind of service project. We're going to ask every student to commit 25 hours of service to a certain organization. And that's part of the assignment. That's part of the coursework. In addition to committing the 25 hours, they're going to be working in teams. So a team of, say, 6 students is going to be committing a total of 150 hours to an organization, a nonprofit organization here in the city. And in doing so, really get a deep understanding of what the underlying issues are, about the causes of those issues, about how the organization operates, how it's funded, how do they serve the people they're serving, who are the people that they're serving. So a really deep practical understanding of the issues here in Boston. But we want to do more than that, because we want to not just look at a snapshot of Boston today, but we want to put things into a larger historical context. And that's where the historical piece comes in, because the third interdependent part of this is to look at the history of Boston and the culture of Boston and New England to get an idea of how have these problems emerged over time, how have they been solved in the past, what are ways that we can really understand the context, the way that we got to the situation we're in now, the decisions that were made, some that were good decisions, some that weren't good decisions, but understanding how is this world that we live in created. And so we're going to use Boston as a case study. And the idea is, at the end of the semester, we'll have a deeper understanding of how are these organizations serving needs? How are we as a team able to engage and assist and serve those needs? And what's the root of those issues? And what's the historical precedent that exists? And so in doing so, we'll really be able to have a good, solid understanding of how groups and communities come together here in New England and in the Boston area. Our idea is we want these students to be able to go out into the world and not only know theoretically what they can do to make the world a better place, but have the actual real-world experience to be able to go out there and make the world a better place. So that's what Leadership and Service is all about. I hope you're excited about the class. I know I'm excited about the class.